Pastor Troy.
Hey, Pastor Luke.
Here we are again, continuing to move through our Old Testament overview, continuing to look at God's promises, specifically right now in the book of Genesis, but looking at how God makes promises to his people and continues to be faithful to those promises, even when people aren't always faithful to God and make some really terrible decisions.
So you're saying in all things?
Yeah.
Even in the messes, especially in the messes? When the people don't believe the promises or mess them up?
God is still at work.
Okay, I can't wait to hear more.
All right, well, so kind of recap where we've been. Last video we talked about God's promises given to the man Abram, who became known, received the name Abraham.
Father of many.
Yes, and so God promised Abraham that he would have a son, that he would have...
He had many sons.
He would have many descendants, that he would have land. So God gave Abraham lots of promises. And
did he give him many promises or one main promise? Or kind of both?
Kind of both.
Two. Okay.
Well, and ultimately these promises, as we've been talking about, they all point to Jesus. They're all
Jesus in all things.
In all things. And
okay.
so it's all moving toward Jesus, because Jesus is a descendant of Abraham. Mm-hmm. So God makes these promises to Abraham and Sarah. They wait a long time, and eventually, in Genesis chapter 1, they give birth, or
Genesis 1?
Genesis 21.
21, okay.
Sarah gives birth to Isaac. So they have a son. God fulfills his promise. And then jump ahead a little bit in Genesis 24, Isaac marries Rebekah.
Okay.
And then next chapter, they give birth, or Rebekah gives birth to twins, Esau and Jacob.
The red guy and the deceiver.
Yes.
Okay.
So we got a family here. Yeah, family's great, but there's some problems with this family. There's some goofy stuff going on. And so Rebekah likes her son Jacob better, and Isaac likes his son Esau better.
He liked red better than
he did.
Tricksters?
And when we get to Genesis 27, so Esau was the oldest one, and Isaac was going to bless Esau. He was going to give him a special blessing as the oldest son. But Rebekah and Jacob put together a conspiracy, and they trick Isaac.
Well, they had a plan.
They had a plan, and they trick Isaac into blessing Jacob.
Well,
instead.
how did they do that? Because Isaac's eyesight was poor, and Esau was really hairy, red hair.
And Jacob wears like a skin of an animal, and so they trick Isaac, and Isaac ends up blessing Jacob instead.
And he can't take the blessing back.
No.
Yeah.
And so Esau's very upset. And he threatens to kill his own brother, and so Jacob flees. So family situation here is awful. We got favoritism going on, we got trickery, deception, threats of murder, all sorts of bad stuff, the way a family should not be. But God is still at work in and through all of this.
Yeah.
He's still at work.
None of it surprised God.
No.
It's still going according to God's plan of giving his promise.
Absolutely. And so when we get to Genesis chapter 28, and that's where we'll pick up today, God gives a specific promise to Jacob, the deceiver.
Yeah.
Now, Jacob, he doesn't deserve any promises from God. Jacob's kind of a sly, tricky, lying.
So didn't he come out of his mother's womb, he grabbed his brother by the heel or something like that?
He lies and cheats his way through life.
Yeah.
And so God gives him a promise. So let's take a look at Genesis chapter 28, and we're going to look at verses 13 through 15. And so Jacob is having a dream where he meets God. And so picking up verse 13. Behold, the Lord stood above it, that is a ladder with all these angels going up and down, and said to Jacob, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. And so we'll stop there. And so Jacob has this dream, and God speaks to him in this dream, and he gives him this promise that the land that you're in right now, I'm going to give to your descendants. You're going to have a whole lot of children, a whole lot of descendants, and your family is ultimately going to be a blessing to all the people of the earth. Really, this is God just reiterating what he promised Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. This is just the next step in actually fulfilling that promise.
Well, so he is he's the grandson of Abraham. And so God says, Genesis 28:15 at the end of it, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you, even if you and your descendants are foolish.
Yeah, and they're pretty foolish.
Yeah.
They again, we can't say it enough. God is dealing with deeply flawed, deeply sinful people here. But God is still faithful to his promises.
Right.
Even in all the sin, God is at work in all things.
Yes.
And so moving ahead then, and we're kind of flying through a lot of this.
Right.
So we recommend that you read these stories. A lot of drama. If you like drama, there's a lot of it here.
You could read it. You could listen to it. A lot of the apps online have audio Bible.
Yep. All right, here we go. So Jacob has a family, he has his 4 wives. And so remember, he still has this issue with Esau, his brother.
Oh, right.
Esau, remember way back, he threatened to kill Jacob. And so at one point, he goes back with his family. And actually, it's pretty cool. Esau forgives Jacob. But before that happens, in Genesis chapter 32, Jacob meets God again. And so we have this kind of really a strange encounter where Jacob wrestles with God.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a strange story, but
did he win the wrestling match?
No, God cheated.
God cheated. He cheated the cheater?
He did.
Wow.
So he's wrestling, and God, touches his hip, and then Jacob's hip
knocked
goes
it out of
joint. But what we want to pay attention to here is in verse. Let's see. So we'll pick up in verse 26 of chapter 32. Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So they're wrestling with each other. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. And so we'll pause there.
So Jacob, God changes Jacob's name. He changed Abram to Abraham. Isaac is Isaac. And then Jacob gets a new name?
Israel.
And so you read, it's translated striven?
Yeah.
Is there, can you translate that to English that I might speak?
Struggle.
Like he wrestles or struggles with God.
Jacob wrestles, struggles, strives with God.
Okay.
That's what Israel means. And so this is where we get the name Israel. And so all of Jacob's descendants are the people of Israel.
So there's a relationship, but it's not always easy because they should just do what God says, but instead they're going to struggle. But God won't give up on them even though they're strugglers.
In the struggle, in the midst of the struggle, God is still going to be faithful.
God uses all things?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll keep going back to this. And so next then we have the instance where Esau forgives Jacob, which is pretty cool that Esau and Jacob are able to have reconciliation in the midst of their messy.
Because Jacob didn't expect Esau to forgive him.
He did not.
Because Esau's mom, along with his brother, took away his birthright.
Yes.
Yeah. Although you could argue that Esau did sell it for a bowl of soup, but whatever.
Yeah.
It was worth a lot more than that.
Yeah. So in Genesis chapters 29 through 31, Jacob has his family. And so he has 2 wives, sisters, Leah and Rachel, and then he also has their servants. And so he has children by all 4 of these women. So we have polygamy in the Bible, and polygamy, not good. Not what God wanted for marriage. But Jacob has these 4 wives, and he has 12 sons by these wives. And the 2 important ones that we want to focus on are Judah, who's the 4th oldest.
Yes.
Judah is the direct ancestor of Jesus. Jesus comes from the tribe of Judah.
Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then also, who we're really going to pay attention to now is the 11th son.
Yes.
His name is Joseph.
And he had an amazing Technicolor dream coat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, we're talking about kind of the messed up nature of this family. Jacob has a favorite son, and it's Joseph.
Yeah. I didn't think that parents were supposed to have favorites, but he was just clear about it. This is my favorite.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he gives Joseph this special coat, many colors, and he shows a lot of favoritism. And
his brothers did not appreciate it.
No. They despise Joseph for it. And what do they do?
Well, they decided, rather than just kind of make his life difficult in the short term, they decided to kidnap him and sell him to some other people.
Terrible.
And then so they sell him into this slavery to these foreigners. And then, because they love their dad so much, they go back and tell their dad that he died.
Yep.
And so they said, hey, Dad, your favorite son just died. And Jacob, understandably, I think was distraught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have, again, lots of bad stuff going on.
Yeah.
A dysfunctional family, if there
Yes.
ever was one.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump ahead to Genesis chapter 37. And so this is where we start to meet Jacob's family. So remember,
Okay.
he has 12 sons, so he has 4 wives, essentially.
Right.
Not good. There's a lot of problems with that. And the 2 most important for what we're talking about, are Judah, who's the 4th oldest. He's the direct ancestor of Jesus.
Because Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
Yes, yes. And then we have the 11th son, Joseph.
Right.
And Jacob loves Joseph. Joseph
Right.
is his favorite son. So Jacob he's playing favoritism.
So Joseph was pretty sure, and his dad reinforced, that he's kind of a big deal.
Yes.
And he had dreams about being
Yeah.
a big deal.
Yeah, that all of his older brothers would bow down and
Yeah.
serve him. And can you imagine, his older brothers didn't really like this. And Jacob reinforced it and gave him a gift of this awesome Technicolor coat.
Dream coat, a
Yeah.
coat of many colors, a
Yeah.
special coat just
Yeah.
for the guy who's
Yeah.
pretty much a big deal.
Yeah. And so Joseph's brothers don't like this, and eventually they kidnap their own brother
Yeah.
and sell him into slavery.
Yeah.
Pretty
so
awful. Pretty
that's,
awful.
They really take it up about 7 notches from like just putting him in his place. And then they go back and they tell their dad, oh, we're so sorry, Dad. Your son, your favorite son with his sweet dream coat, he died.
Animal killed him.
They lied to their dad too. So these are messed up people.
They're pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And so Joseph he's sold into slavery, and he ends up in Egypt. And actually, even though being sold in slavery, that would be terrible. That's a terrible thing. He spends time in prison.
Right.
He's mistreated. He's falsely accused of things.
Yeah.
But Joseph actually, he rises in power.
So God's blessing that was on his people is still on Joseph.
Yeah, absolutely. And eventually, Joseph rises he's basically the second in charge of all of Egypt, next to only Pharaoh.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That this former slave is now basically ruling the nation of Egypt.
So his brothers betrayed him,
Yep.
but God still blessed him even though his brothers betrayed him.
Yep. He's at work.
Yeah.
And so at one point there is a giant, Joseph has a dream that in 7 years there's going to be a giant famine.
He has a lot of dreams.
He does. There's going to be this famine. And so for 7 years, they start preparing for this famine so they have enough food to eat when the famine hits.
Yeah.
And they save up food and all that. And so when the famine hits, the people of Egypt don't starve. And they're taken care of because of what Joseph has done. And eventually, Joseph's family, they're still alive.
Right.
Jacob and his other sons, they hear about this. Oh, there's food down in Egypt, so they go down to Egypt.
Yeah.
And they meet Joseph. They don't recognize him, but Joseph recognizes them. But again, we have this cool story where Joseph actually forgives his own brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, so God takes Joseph, whose brothers betrayed him, and he suffered because of them. And God uses him to show mercy to his brothers, who really, if all things are equal and they betrayed me, I was like, hey, I'm going to show you what's up. Instead,
Yeah,
He's
Joseph
blessed.
could have. He is the second in charge of Egypt.
Right.
He could have done whatever he
Yeah.
wanted to his brothers, but he forgave them.
yeah, and you have Joseph said something really cool
Yeah,
at the end of that.
so at the end of the book of Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, Joseph says, "As for you," that is his brothers, "you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones." Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. And so Joseph recognizes that even though what his brothers did to him, they meant for evil, and it was evil. It was an evil act. God meant it for good and was able to work good in it. He was able to save thousands of people by providing them food during this famine. But also, more importantly for our story, Joseph, through the actions of Joseph, God preserves his special people, the people, Jacob and his family, who are the descendants of Isaac, who are the descendants of Abraham. And so we see through what God does through Joseph, he is preserving the promises that he gave to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, the promises that he gave to Noah, and the promises that he gave to Adam and Eve. And so even in spite of all the messy, terrible things that we talk about, and we left out a lot. There's a lot of even worse things.
There's a lot there.
God is still at work in all things. And God is moving toward sending the ultimate promise of Jesus. That's where all of this is going.
Yeah, because Jesus is one who is betrayed by his followers, and he dies so that many might be saved.
What people meant for evil against Jesus, to kill him on the cross, God meant for good.
So God is at work in and through Jesus in all things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up here for Genesis, and next time we'll be moving into Exodus.
Exodus. Are there videos you're going to include in the end of this?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so check out wherever those links are
Bible
if
Project.
you want to watch Bible Project videos. All right, see you. Until next time.